That's great.
Thank you.
Dr. Kirch.
Yeah. Oh, you want me to tell my story? Everybody get their pillow out. It's boring. Anyway, yeah, I went to vet school, second career, as a matter of fact. Actually, like Noah, I had an interest in medicine early on and worked with animals quite exclusively. And at that point, I went to UNL, University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and I was in the animal science department. And I got interested in nutrition. So I went on and did a master's and a PhD in nutrition. And then it was life throws little curves at you now and then. And I just thought, well, maybe I'll go back and try the vet school thing. And Iowa State got stupid and let me in. And so I actually finished my DVM at Iowa State. And then I practiced equine medicine in Pennsylvania for about 1 year with a practice. And then I covered or did relief work for about 2 years. And then following that, I ended up in New Mexico for a short stint in a practice there. And then I got very interested when I had a position come open that I wanted some of the expertise that I had at the USDA in Kentucky. And so I was a research associate, veterinary medical officer for the USDA for 3 years before coming to CSU. So that's kind of, at Kentucky, we worked with cattle and horses and sheep. So that's the nickel routine.
Dr. Engel. I'm just going to keep calling people. So
That's fine. So yeah, hello everyone. Good evening. My name is Terry Engel. I am not a veterinarian. I went to, I guess my history is, and I'm old. So my history is, I went to school as an undergraduate master's degree here at CSU, did a PhD degree at North Carolina State University, and came back here almost 21 years ago and joined the faculty. And so I've been at CSU 21 years just about, and primarily do research in the area of beef cattle nutrition, if you will, and health. And well, I don't even know how long, I'll have to ask Dr. Bremer, but served on the veterinary selection committee for many, many years.
Will you come here? Like, hurry.
Amelia, that's all I got.
okay, Dr. Pinetto.
There we go. Yeah, so my name is Pablo Pinedo. I'm associate professor in animal science. I'm a native from Chile, so I went to the vet school there. After graduation, I worked for 10 years with dairy cattle in Chile, and then got this crazy idea of coming to the US to go with a PhD. So I went to the University of Florida, completed that, and then I also stayed to do a residency, a clinical work in food animals. So after that, I was a few years in Texas A&M, 4 years, and then I came 5 years ago to CSU. So I work mostly with dairy cattle, and a big component of my appointment is research in health, reproduction, different things, very applied research. So that's my story.
Dr. Nair, if you want to go ahead.
I'm waiting for you to call someone out so that I'm not stepping on someone else's time. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mahesh Nair. I am an assistant professor in the animal science department, primarily working with the meat science group. Been here for 3 years now. I'm originally from India, and my background is slightly different than what you have heard so far. In India, the system is slightly different about how you get into vet school. So directly from high school, once you are done with your high school, you can write an exam like SAT, And based on the scores, you are either admitted into vet school or not. So I was fortunate enough to get into vet school at that point. It was a 6-year program, completed that in 2003, a long time back. I'm aging myself here. Then worked for a year. Sorry, I started in 2003, completed in 2009. Worked for a year and then decided to pursue my master's in meat animal production. So I did my master's and PhD at University of Kentucky. Graduated from there in 2017 and then started here in 2017.
Dr. Bremer.
Good evening. I'm Jason Bremer. We're not going to talk about age here. Thanks for that, Dr. Engel. I've been here slightly longer than Terry, about 24 years. I'm also not a veterinarian, but Dr. Engel and I have served on the veterinary review panel as alternating years for a long time. I know that my background, like I said, I'm not a veterinarian. I did an animal science degree at Texas A&M, a master's degree there. Done my PhD at New Mexico State University, and then I came here. I actually retired from here this year, so that's how old I am. And I'm now working at the USDA as a project leader for fertility control of all wildlife species in the US. And so my job here is to tell you what I've learned in the 10 or 12 or 15 or 20 years that I served on the board to get students into vet school and talk to you about the value of the education that you're getting now at CSU as either an animal or an equine science major. So that's why I'm here, I think. That, and I married Dr. Noah, so that made me smarter than anybody else. That's it, Amelia.
It looks like we also have Dr. Hess on here as well. The question was, what is your personal journey to vet school? And if you have anything that you look for in an applicant's application for vet school.
Hi, I'm Tanya Hess. I'm graduated in Brazil as a veterinarian, worked there as a field practitioner for several years. I always knew I wanted to be a vet. And then I did my PhD in nutrition, and I went back to animal science because I like the part of prevention of disease through nutrition and preventive medicine. So that's what some of it I teach to the equine science students, how important it is to understand things and to prevent disease. So, and hopefully,
Great. Okay, so now we're going to open this back up to all of you to ask questions of the panel. I'm happy to get it started in case nobody wants to jump out there with a question. But go ahead and put your questions in the chat, and either Kayla or myself will read those out to the panel. Okay, well, I'm just going to get this started then, even though I've never wanted to go to vet school. So let's just go ahead. The first question would be, do you need a specific degree, or are there certain minors or majors that are better for vet school entrance? Does it matter what degree do you have? Do you even need a degree for vet school?
No, the answer is no. You do not need a degree for vet school. You just need to complete the prereqs for admission. I'll tell you all, I went to animal sciences, right? I sort of took the same route that you're all taking, and pretty much everyone in the panel did the same thing. But I had classmates that had been architects before, or people that were doing art before, and they simply finished their requirements and were successfully admitted and completed vet school. So And I don't have a degree. I don't have a bachelor's degree.
I'm going to jump in here and maybe answer a bunch of these questions at once, because I have been on the committee almost as long as Dr. Engel. And all the questions you're asking there kind of lead to the same answer. Exactly what Dr. Noah said. You don't need a degree, but you're getting a degree, and you're getting a very useful degree. And so don't forget about that. And hopefully that's your driving force, is to use the knowledge that you're getting for this degree, and that you value it for that, other than just to get into vet school. Getting into vet school, you've been told that it's about grades and grades and grades, and that's true, but that's not only it. What makes your application into vet school a successful one is when you're unique, because there are hundreds and thousands of people that look and do exactly what you do. They're getting a degree in animal science or equine science or biology or chemistry, and they've got straight A's or something pretty close. One of you asked on here, should I have a master's degree? And I'll answer that one in a minute. What do you think about drop classes? We look at that, we realize that everybody's got a life, and that's where I think you need to make a splash in your application, is be unique. Tell a story that nobody else has said. Don't start your essay with, I wanted to be a veterinarian my whole life. After my dog got hit by a car and the veterinarian saved it, and ever since then, that's what I wanted to be. Everybody writes that. Do something unique. Tell us about you. Tell us about what makes you different, what you're going to bring to this practice, what you're going to bring to your clients, what you're going to bring to science. Getting some background in research is one way to make yourself unique, because not everybody's doing the same kind of research. Sometimes that drop class can be a good story, right? I had to drop chemistry class because I fell off the roof because I was saving the neighbor's kid, something like that people remember. My favorite story was one that one of the vet schools asked them to describe what makes them unique, and she talked about how there's role playing that goes on in vet school, that you get to learn how to interact with clients. And we all know that clients are crazy, because we're all animal people and we're crazy too. And she said, I learned about that working at Home Depot. She says, I've had to duck and dodge as people threw tape measures at my head because they didn't like the prices on the wood. She said, so bring on crazy, I'm ready. I remembered that. She got into vet school. She was great. So those are the kind of things to think about. Tell your story, what makes you unique, because each and every one of you is. It's not your 4.0. It's not the fact that you were a great equine or animal science student at CSU, although that certainly helps. But as you know, there's 400 of you. So be unique. And if you've had a little bit of a hiccup, just tell the story. Be honest and describe how it made you a better person, because that's also what's going to make you a better professional, because you're going to have hiccups as veterinarians as well. And I think we look for that. So I'll shut up now.
I would concur with everything that's been said to this point. Absolutely. Those early hiccups, they don't wipe you totally out. What we're looking for is also improvement as you go through your 4 years, and especially with those tough courses. As far as degrees go, there's no guarantee of success with a degree or without a degree going through vet school. But one of the things that I have noticed is that you're in a really good degree to be a practicing veterinarian. Most of the skills that you get and the interactions and the things that we do in the animal science degree are very beneficial to you in daily practice. There wasn't a day I didn't use nutrition, being in equine forages type classes, reproduction. The stuff that we teach you will give you a leg up when you walk into practice, and that doesn't matter whether you're working with horses, cattle, or dogs, or cats, or even that guinea pig. The basis, you're in a good degree to gain benefit once you graduate and being a good veterinarian.
I'll piggyback on what Dr. Kurtz just said. Like I mentioned earlier, the degree program, the way it's set up in India, it's slightly different. The first 3 years, it's basically your animal science degree here. Basically, you go through different production system, management systems, and all of those. And the last 3 years of the program is basically your treatment side, how you're using surgery, obstetrics, gynecology, all of that. So the way the program set up helped me to understand how the production is done so that I can understand how it's going to be applied when I'm coming from the treatment side. So I absolutely agree with what Dr. Kurtz said on how this degree sets up you to be really successful in what you're going to do as in your career as a veterinarian.
So one of the questions from the chat, it says, vet schools all have different prerequisites. I'm currently putting together a 4-year plan, looking at a list of vet school prereqs and deciding on what vet schools I'm applying to now. Should I be doing that, or is there another route?
So I'll start. Back in the day when I applied, it wasn't online. So you got a booklet, right? And you could see all the prereqs. And I remember sitting down and deciding first what schools that I was interested in, because maybe they had a strength in an area that I was passionate about. And I made sure that I included those prereqs for those schools that I was for sure going to apply to into my curriculum, right? And I made sure that I did all that early on, so that when I submitted the applications, and you can have some classes that you're still working on, and that's fine, you can get accepted that way, right? And they will say you're accepted as long as you pass biochemistry, for example. But I made sure that I had all the prereqs for just so that, you know, Puerto Rico doesn't have a vet school. So my strategy was to apply to several, and I ended up applying to 7 just to make sure. Some people choose not to do that, but yeah, I made sure that all those prereqs were part of my 3-year plan or 4-year plan. Yeah.
I would agree with that. As I tell most students when they're looking at their schools to apply to, you know, your sophomore, it's not too early to start looking into those vet schools, because each one's got a different requirement and each one has a different feel. Every vet school out there has a different personality, a different thing that they're good at. Yeah, it's not too early to start working on that and finding out where you want to target. You know, it's good to just go through and find what the prerequisites, who wants just 1 semester of OChem and that type of thing. I understand that, but you really want to look at the school, their expertise. No school is perfect at everything they do, and find the one that fits your personality and then go after it.
I have a question. Are there any veterinarians in the chat who are in need of an intern or know someone in need of an intern?
So an intern, none of us are actually practicing outside of CSU unless someone is doing something that I don't know. Is that what you mean? An intern that would go on calls on dairies or horse operations?
Yeah, like back in Jersey, I interned in a veterinary hospital.
We can put you in contact with people who might be looking for interns.
That'd be great. Thank you.
There was a question about if you want to go abroad for vet school, are there certain things that they look for internationally, or how can you stand out?
Amelia, I'm going to step in here and answer one of the other questions just because it's one that I get a lot, and I know a lot of us do because we also have graduate programs. And somebody asked about getting a master's degree before or after vet school. And I think that's a great question. It's one that I get asked a whole lot, and I'll share the answer that I give all of the students that ask me that. And that is, I would say no. In many cases, if you're passionate enough to get a master's degree, it's probably in an area that you can also be board certified in. And if you get a master's degree before you go to vet school, you'll commit 2 more years to a graduate degree, then you'll go to veterinary school. And if you want to get recognition for that in a board certification, obviously my area is reproduction, you'd have to do a 2-year residency or a 3-year residency afterwards anyway, regardless of the fact that you already have a master's. And so I would suggest that you get into vet school, find your passion, and if you're still passionate about that particular degree, then you can pursue a master's oftentimes concurrently with your residency and do it after vet school. If, and I think this is probably what's on everybody's mind, is that you think that makes you a better candidate to get into vet school. I think in some cases, people will tell you that because you can show them that you've done well in graduate school. But don't go to graduate school just to get into vet school. That's not good for you. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of effort on your part. It's a lot of money that is going to be spent in doing something. And if you're only doing it to get into veterinary school, there's lots of other ways to make yourself unique and to get those experiences that isn't through the graduate process. And so that's my thought on that, and I'm done again. Engel?
No, I think Dr. Bremer, you're spot on. You know, research. If you're interested in research, you definitely want to do a master's, PhD degree. But I echo that. Don't just get a master's degree because you think it'll make you a better applicant for veterinary medicine, because a lot of time and a lot of money involved in that. Kind of addressing the question about international experience, it really goes back to what Jason was saying earlier, is all about experience, right? You know, what makes you unique in that application. And the ones that stand out, like Jason was mentioning, they stand out to me too, you know, the unique ones. Not like you need to do something where you've I don't know, won the Nobel Prize or anything like that. Don't get crazy, but that you have tried something, and if it's international experiences, or if it's working in Fort Collins here, that's fine. But one couple things I would say is if you, it's okay to fail, and you can discuss that. You know, you can say, hey, I remember reading one application, one letter that said, it started out, I failed. And they talked about that situation and how they got through it. And that, in my opinion, was really, really unique, because that student was not afraid to say, yep, I failed, I owned it, here's what I did to fix it, and here's how I learned from it. And those are really good, it sticks in my head still to this day, and that was a long time ago. And I thought that was a really unique way, I mean, to grab someone's attention, but they really were very articulate on how they messed up and they learned from it and moved on. I'll also say, the only other thing I'll say is don't be afraid to step through that door if an opportunity arises. I'll just tell you one application I remember reading. This student was an interior design student and wanted to go to vet school, and I thought that was interesting, right? And she ended up taking all the prerequisites, but what got her interested in this is she was taking her interior design classes, and then she had a friend that collected rooster sperm, and she got involved in that. And so it was that's where she fell in love with the theorio side of things, and got into vet school. And so she's a practicing veterinarian now. So lots of really unique stories, and you're all unique. And you don't need to, again, win the Nobel Prize. You just need to say, here's who I am. Here's how how I got to where I'm at. And be proud of that. And if you screw up, own it and move on.
Amelia, I can speak a little bit to the international applications. I've had about 5 students over the last 13 years go to international schools. And the one common thing amongst all of them is they all had international experience. That seems to pull some weight with international schools. I've had 1 in Australia, 2 in New Zealand, 1 in Slovenia, and 1 in, I think it was Edinburgh, if I remember correctly. I may be wrong. It may be that or Dublin. And all of them did have some level of international experience. The 2 that went to New Zealand both had the junior experience over there. They had a exposure to that. The other 3 had Africa experience, 1 in South Africa, well, 2 in South Africa, 1 with the cheetahs, 1 with brucellosis in the water buffalo, and the other one was had worked with cattle operations in Kenya. So all of them that had an international desire had some that were accepted into international programs did have some level of international experience. That is, but that's good also if you want to apply to a U.S. school. The international experience does look good in some way and inform on your applications.
Looks like these next few questions kind of go together. Did any of you have a plan B if vet school didn't work out? How did you figure out what the plan B might be? Or if you did not go to vet school, how did you figure out what you wanted to do? And also, if you're a senior and you do not make it into vet school, what is the next course of action?
I'll go ahead, Amelia. I think I mentioned this when I introduced myself, but I had a plan B. And I think everybody here who's interested in vet school should be talking, right, with your advisor or with your friends or family about a plan B. And I was, right, I had the grades and all this stuff, but some of the most important conversations that I had with my parents were that in life, you need to have several options, right? Because you might have a plan and rarely it works how you intended, right? How you saw it. So my plan was to finish animal sciences and be part of the dairy industry. And I was in animal sciences because I have a passion for dairy and dairy production and dairy health and all that good stuff, right? So that was going to be my path. I was in my head, I was going to be involved in dairy production one way or another, right? And so I cannot stress this enough. You all need to be thinking about a plan B or C. And I think when you don't think about that, you might be shortchanging your education because you're so focused on vet school that you're not taking opportunities to work in Dr. Engel's lab or go to the Equine Center and do really, really cool stuff, right? If you want to explore opportunities, you might find another true passion, actually a bigger passion than vet medicine, right? So please, please, please consider other options. And I'm not saying that you're not gonna get into vet school, but you might find something that's even better for you.
I totally agree with that. I actually did my plan B. Nutrition became a passion. My sophomore year, I had my first nutrition course, and I couldn't get enough of it. I loved it. I loved the interaction, the chemistry, and all that type of thing. And it just so happened that I took exactly the same curriculum that all the pre-vets did at that time. So yeah, please don't short yourself on the experiences. I agree with Noah 100%. You can have other passions. I came back to medicine because it was always a passion of mine too. I have a lot of interests, unfortunately, and it takes up a lot of my time, but definitely a plan B is important. Find out as you go through your classes, something's going to trip your trigger. Something's going to pique your interest. There's going to be an instructor that speaks to you or that type of thing. And don't be afraid to pursue that and to look at it.
I was someone who actually, again, pursued my plan B after getting into vet school. So I got to vet school, and then during the internships, I actually realized that this might not be what I want to do for the rest of my life. And during my internship, I worked in a meat facility where I was getting involved with things that's going on, and that's when I decided, hey, this is what I want to do. Just to be sure, I worked for a year, right, practice as a veterinarian, just to make sure, okay, I am getting proper closure on that, did that, and then pursued my plan B. So it's okay to have that switch. And again, it's okay. And people may not always agree with that first time around, but it's about how you feel about that. This is your life. And if you are feeling comfortable about the decision you're making, go ahead and make that. You don't need to get everyone's blessing or approval to do that. Sometimes you just have to make that leap.
And I wanted to jump on that. And someone wrote, does the plan B have to be related to animal sciences? Not really. And when I introduced myself, I didn't tell you what I do now. Like my introduction was pretty short compared to everybody else's, but my area of specialty is training people in a culturally sensitive way. That, if you think about it, has nothing to do with what they teach you in vet school, but it has everything to do with being an effective veterinarian or animal health person. So the options are endless. And so find something. Your plan B, again, should be something that gets you excited, that you could be doing for the rest of your life, right? Not just, don't settle, right? Find exactly what it is. And it could be something that has to do with art, and you might be able to combine art with vet medicine, right?
Yeah.
Or it's anything in the social sciences like I'm doing right now. So don't have such a narrow view of what veterinary medicine is that you miss out on a bunch of opportunities.
So one question that was a little bit further back in the chat was asking about how many minors you would need. I know I have a lot of students that add as many minors as possible, thinking that would make them different. How do you address that?
I'll just say one thing about minors. You know, I wouldn't go crazy on minors, but if you're really thinking about a minor, in my opinion, this is my opinion only, is a foreign language. I know that sounds crazy, and I would go after Spanish, in my opinion. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Thank you, Dr. Engel.
I would say minors are not a necessity, and especially with the extra workload you have to put onto yourself to fill the prerequisites for vet school. You know, and I think that people will tell you that have been on the review committees, minors don't always show up when we're reviewing. I mean, all they are is a set of classes. I mean, those of us who are involved in academia can generally identify them, but it's just an additional set of classes. I mean, if it's an interest of yours, by all means, go for it. But is it a necessity? No.
And the question that you could ask yourself is, do I need that minor, or could I use the same time to do something else to make myself unique and make my case stronger for my vet school application? So that, when you ask yourself that question, that would answer, do I need a minor or not?
I'd like to follow up on what Dr. Kirch and Mahesh just said. Take a chance, or take an opportunity if you can, to look at what the application really looks like on the other end. I think you'll be really surprised at how the information you think you're providing gets across. The CSU vet one that we are all very well familiar with, it's very hard to tell even what your major was, much less whether you had a minor or not. So if you did do a minor, or you have a unique degree or something about that, use the narrative to explain that. Because if you think that your application is going to look like a resume where the first thing it says is that you were a 4.0 student in animal science with a minor in Spanish, like Dr. Engel suggests you have, it won't show up that way at all. And so if you've done that and you've made the effort to do that, make sure somewhere it's written in your narrative. You have to actually say that because it's not going to show up. It's not going to be obvious in any of the applications. And I know that's really strange. And as a reviewer, it's tough to piece that out. And sometimes that gets a little frustrating when you're trying to figure out what these students really did. And if you would just write that in your narrative, that you're really proud of the fact that you've done this, that, or the other, then all of that works together. So thanks for bringing that up. Right.
So the question about mental health in aspects of being a veterinarian and how do you deal with this and has it become more prevalent?
Do you mind if I jump in? So the stress, the mental, emotional burden is real. Actually, pretty much every panelist that's speaking to you tonight at least knows someone who has suffered depression and has either thought about or committed suicide. So I just want to put that out there, and this is being studied now more than previously, and I'm glad that it's taking the space that it should take. I'm gonna start by prevention, and another critical conversation that I had with my parents as I was applying to vet school was think about money. And I am so grateful that I made a decision based on, a bunch of factors went into it, but money and how much debt I was gonna have after vet school, that was discussed. And I made my decision with that information. So keep that in mind. And I see Dr. Kirch going like this, right?
Yep.
Because that's huge, right? And I do not want you to be a slave all your life trying to pay those students' loans. That's number one. Number two, while you are in vet school, you really need to take care of yourself and have a support system. And understand then that being a veterinarian is only a slice of your identities, right? It's only a part of you. It doesn't define you as a person. Just like having a PhD doesn't define you as a person. You're a lot more than that. And you do need to practice self-care, and you need to have a life outside of what you do in the clinic or in the surgery room, or a life outside of vet school. And I know that all of us panelists here have students that now are in vet school and come back and talk to us. And I spend most of my time talking to them about what are they doing outside of classes, because you need to stay healthy. So it is a big deal. And if you choose livestock medicine, or equine medicine, your joints, your body is gonna hurt, not only your mind, right? So you need to be aware of all that, and you truly need to take care of your body and your mental health. Otherwise, it's not gonna be sustainable, and you might need to change your career, right? So, and I don't know if anyone else wants to jump in, but I'm really passionate about that. Be wise this is a business decision. And then how do you make that business sustainable?
Like Noah, this is a big deal to me. I mean, it's number one on my hit parade, to be honest with you. I've had in the last year, and I know everybody on this panel has had somebody lost. I've lost 2 individuals very close to me over the last year or last couple of years, both veterinarians, and it is, and Noah said it, it's not your identity. I heard so many people when I was in vet school say, as soon as I get this DVM, life is going to be good. That's not the case. That's just the opposite. When I was in practice, I was in a truck at 6:30 in the morning, and I didn't get home until somewhere between 7 and 8 every night. And that was 6 days a week. And then a half day on Sundays when I was on call. And so it's a hard life, and you need to be able to say no. You need to be able to define who you are and to separate it from the job. It can be all consuming, and you cannot allow that. You can develop those skills right now to protect yourself. You can develop those skills to say no. You know, I've made an emergency call. I had a student. I ended up in the emergency room at 2 o'clock in the morning. She was in a panic. They told her she'd had a stroke. She called me. I went and talked to her. And I said, I'm a veterinarian, but I don't think you had a stroke. But what she had is anxiety migraines, which look like a stroke. And so one of the things you have to do is you have to set those boundaries in your life. And for her, every Saturday from sun up to sundown, she couldn't touch book. She couldn't study. She had to go. I didn't care what she did, but you need to set those boundaries in your life now and not let it become the all-consuming thing and wrap up your identity specifically in that. This is the most scary part, and Noah's absolutely right. The money is oftentimes the thing that seems to be a big component of people hurting themselves. And so live frugally, live like nobody else now, so you can live like nobody else later. That's the old saying. Be frugal, keep your expenses down. And I know that's difficult being a veterinarian now. Average debt's over 200,000 coming out, and starting at 60, 70,000 seems like a lot of money, but it's not when you got that payment. But set those boundaries now in your life. I know for several of us, this is a big deal, and I don't want to see anybody else lost as a result of this.
Can you guys elaborate more on the financial debt and how to deal with that, or if there's any kind of loan relief that you can apply for?
That's a $10,000 question, to be honest with you. Just and as I tell most students, I said, you don't have to go skiing every weekend. Go skiing once a weekend, but keep your expenses down as low as you possibly can. Your living expenses. It's not easy, especially in today's environment and with the expenses. But $10,000 when you're tired can make a big difference. So you're just going to have to do the best you can and keeping those expenses. I don't have a magic bullet for you on that. And just living frugally is part of it. Because I had classmates who did not live frugally and they paid the price. And it's 30 years of repayment. We can talk about some of the USDA programs in blighted areas, asking for veterinarians. There's some of those that are very good. There's some of those that are not. And if you're not familiar with the repayment programs for going into blighted areas, it is an option for veterinarians. But it's most of the time I'll tell people in a lot of those areas, if there was enough work to maintain a veterinarian, there would probably be one there. Not always, but lots of times that's the case. Military, the Vet Corps, everybody I've ever known that went to the Vet Corps loved the Vet Corps, and they will pay part of your expenses. There are programs out there where you can hook up with veterinarians who will pay a portion of your expenses through vet school to come and practice with them. I know one in Broken Bow, Nebraska, where they will offset some of your tuition if you're willing to go there. But Broken Bow is out there in the middle of nowhere too. So there are unique ways of doing it, but there's no silver bullet. It's an expensive game, but just try to save whatever you can wherever you can. I know that's not a very good answer, but that's how I approached it.
Good, thank you. I appreciate it.
There's been several questions about internships and how important internships are. Could you just talk about what are some things you look for with students getting outside hands-on experience?
It goes back to making yourself unique. Tell a story.
Right.
Do something different in your internship, or even if it's the same internship at the same great place. If it's at Haggard, for instance, that only our students get to go to. Make sure that you've got a personal connection and a great story to tell. And it doesn't have to be about saving the life of that foal or whatever. There's lots of other things that happen at your internships, and kind of going back to what Dr. Engel said, sometimes it's a good opportunity to talk about what you struggled with. So internships are great. The vet school is going to train you to do everything you need to know how to do. The experiences that you get are just to make you a unique person, to find out what part of veterinary medicine you want to go into or not. And that's not a bad thing, right? You go to Haggard and decide that horses are a pain in the ass and people that own them are crazy, and no one's going to argue with that. Write that down. And now you want to be a small animal vet. That's fine. Or you've decided that those hours that Dr. Kurtz was just talking about are awful. And so you want to be a research scientist with a veterinary degree. That's great. Don't think of veterinary school only as being a practicing veterinarian. There's, as you can tell from this panel, lots of faculty members that are veterinarians, drug companies that rely on veterinarians day in and day out. There's all sorts of amazing things that you can do with your veterinary degree. It will not close any doors, right? If you want to write a book when you're done, or become a comedian or whatever, we know veterinarians that do all of those things. So that doesn't really get to the internship part, but don't worry about what the internship is specifically. If it's something you're interested in and you don't know anything about it, that's a good reason to do it. If it's something you know you're going to love, it's a good reason to do it. Just make sure that you can tell a good story and a unique story when you're done with it.
So a question that just popped up: would another major such as biology or chemistry be better for someone who wants to work with small animals?
No. No. The principles are the husbandry principles, the nutrition. In small animal practice, you're going to have a nutritional question every day of your life, and probably 2 or 3. I've gotten this question multiple times. This is an excellent degree to have to be a practitioner. It's not the only one you can have. As everybody have said, I had classmates who had art degrees and fashion design and interior design. It's not the only degree that you can have, but it sets you up very well, even with the small animal component. Nutrition is nutrition. Repro is repro. There's variations with each species. There's no doubt about that. But the principles, the hormones, the chemistry is the same. And the practical hands-on experience that you get in this degree is incredibly valuable, you know. And the thing of it is, even if you want to do small animal, you're going to get to do a large animal practice too. And if you're comfortable at least being around a cow, that'll put you well ahead of a lot of your classmates. That's my personal bias. Now, you can take that because I come from an animal science degree. And so, yeah, I love this degree. I love this discipline. But I really have watched some of my classmates, especially early on in their practices, the people with these degrees did really well. I'm not saying it's an automatic success, but it definitely helps you if you want to go into practice.
I would agree with Dr. Kirch, and I wanted to add something. When you have a DVM behind your name, the pet owners, the dog and cat owners, expect you to know about livestock production. They expect you to, right? You're their source of information about organic milk or the treatment of animals on factory farms. And I think this degree allows you to be a more rounded vet. Because again, you are the expert. I don't care if you are specializing in chinchillas. They expect you to know about cows and horses and how we are treating them, right? And the animals that we eat and the safety of those products. So I think that this degree does add to the value that you bring to your clients.
I'm going to pop in randomly. I haven't talked the whole time. Sorry about that. But when applying to vet school, can you all talk about the interviews that you have to go through, what that kind of looks like, what attire to wear, what to expect?
I'll chime in, I guess, first. I helped with the MMPs here, which is the interview process at Iowa or at Colorado State for 3 years. Professional attire, you know, can you prepare for a interview for vet school? No, not really. My suggestion is go in, enjoy the process. The people who had fun with it came across much better. Interviews can make or break your application. We've had several students who got positions who might not have in the last 3 years here at CSU because of their interviews. And we had a couple that didn't because of their interviews. But for the most part, you know, just go and have fun with it. And I know that seems like a weird thing to say, but the people who were having fun did so much better. Professional attire, you know, that's an important component because it means you do care. But my recommendation is go have fun with them. And can you really honestly study and prepare for them? No, because we're going to give you situational stuff that is more going to see how you respond to pressure, how you're going to respond to situations. And that's a part of who you are and the stuff that you've observed in your internships. Now I'm going to shut up. Sorry.
I'm going to chime in on that one because we did lots and lots of interviews for a long time, and Dr. Kirch is right. In more than one occasion, the top student after the interview was not offered a position. And so maybe, and I don't want to offend anybody, but the idea in the interview is, yes, situational things. We want to see how you think on your feet. What it really comes down to is whether or not they like you and they want to work with you. So don't be an asshole is really what it comes down to. And that's, people show up and you've worked your butt off for the last 4 or 5 years to get there, and you want to make sure that you get this job. And it's not about getting a job. It's about now being the colleague to the person that's doing the interview. So they want to know that you're somebody that they can work with and get along with for the next 4 years and beyond, because it's going to be what your life is like. So that's my suggestion about that. The professional attire, yeah, but something you'd be comfortable in. If you're not used to wearing really business-like clothes all the time, don't do that, because it'll knock you off your game. So be yourself, be comfortable, just make sure that you feel like you've put the effort in, and that'll come across.
I was just going to add, I agree with everything that Dr. Bremer and Dr. Kirch have said. Be yourself, because, and I've been part of the interview process too, we can tell when you're faking it, right? And again, if you're there giving me fake answers, I can read through all that, and what I ask myself is, would I want to work with this person every day, right? And the answer is no when it's not genuine.
I would add just one more thing, that something that has worked for me is approach every interview as, I don't have anything to lose here, so I'm just going to enjoy the process and just come out of that without no regrets. So that's less pressure on you. So you are being yourself, and people like when you are being yourself rather than being fake. So that's my general advice for any interviews that you're going to go to.
Okay, I'm going to jump in again. Was academia a part of your career plan when you were in the application process? Would you have done something differently if you knew that you would invest part of your career in academia?
No, it wasn't, but my mom always told me that I was going to be a teacher, and she obviously knew me better than I knew myself. And what would I do differently? I would have taken more psychology and sociology and anthropology courses to be more effective working with people. And I'll add, psychology courses would be great because you will be, I know that you'll want to be veterinarians, but the reality is that you are dealing with people every day. Animals are easy, right? We understand their physiology. We know how to diagnose them and treat them. The people that belong to the animals are the problem most of the time. So a psychology class would be fantastic.
Totally agree. I mean, I love where I'm at. Like Noah, for some reason, my class voted me most likely to teach in vet school because I guess I helped a lot of my classmates out, didn't realize it, and here I am. You know, academia is a wonderful thing. I love teaching. I love helping students get to their next level, whatever that may be, whether that's working in a feedlot or going to vet school. And no, I wouldn't change a thing. I love practice too. I'm not gonna lie to you, I enjoyed the everyday, but the long hours and me getting old kind of put a damper on that. But you know, I wouldn't change a thing. I don't know if that answers the question, but
I'll chime in real quick. Again, academy was not part of my plan when I ended vet school. My dad was a college teacher, and I was so adamant that I wouldn't become one. So that's why I decided to go to vet school and realized that, oh shit, this is not what I want to. And then here I am. So this is why I said, like, sometimes you plan one thing, things don't go according to plan, you change the plan and just have confidence in changing that plan. If I knew I was going to academia, I would have spent a little more time getting familiar with other sides, like other aspects of like social sciences, or like Noah said, other things that could come in as a plug-in or help me understand some of the things better. So that's my only 2 cents on that.
In my case, it was not the initial plan, but I think I was falling in love with the idea of being in academia. As I said, I worked 10 years with dairy cows, and I think that's interesting because when you go back to academia, you get a feeling of what is happening, you know, in the real world, if you could say. So I think that gives you a balance that I think is important. So I really like to, you know, have been part of that world and then coming to academia and being able of having that background.
Okay, so I want to try and get through as many questions as we can just because we're about a little bit of time left. How important is a heavy undergraduate course load on an application? If you take 12 to 15 hour credits versus 16 to 18 hour semesters, will that look bad to the review panel?
Depends on what you're doing in the other time. If you're only taking 12 hours and you don't have a job and you can't demonstrate that you've done something with that extra time, that kind of comes through. If you're taking 18 hours and not doing well, then that also comes through. So balance it. But recognize that the people looking at this, a lot of them are other veterinarians, and they're looking to see how you balance your life. And that's really what it comes down to, all the way back to what Dr. Noah said about hobbies and those kind of things. Make them obvious, right? If you're taking 12 hours, but you're coaching a little league team or you're a competitive something else, that's fine. Just tell the story and let them know that there's more things in your life than just school. And if the school is what you're doing all the time, then do that and make it obvious.
Okay, so on to the next couple ones that are sort of related. Would an animal science degree be better than an equine science degree? Saying it's a more well-rounded vet. Also, if you want to be an exotic vet, would you recommend also majoring in zoology?
I'm going to jump in there again. Animal and equine science or biology or whatever, like I said, most applications you don't even know what the student's major is. Show how you did well in the coursework, relate to the coursework. Whatever makes you tick is what you need to do. And then the zoology thing, I don't know if you all caught, but right now I'm working as a wildlife biologist. I've never taken a wildlife course or a zoology course in my life. And so it goes to physiology is physiology. Do what you love. If zoology or the wildlife course has got instructors that you match up with, then do that. But no one's going to see the title. It's who you are and what you're doing with what you've learned.
I would completely agree with that. And just so that you know, I have vet school classmates who are now senior veterinarians at zoos. They had no zoology background anywhere. After vet school, if you want to specialize in that, that's when you do it, right? I mean, some experiences during vet school, you're going to make sure that your externships match with your interests, but then you're going to have to specialize in that. So what you did before vet school doesn't really matter.
I would agree. I think it depends on what your interests are. The people that have done the minor in zoology generally have a strong interest in mammalogy or something of that nature. So that's the reason we generally went with it. But it's got to be your interest. And one of the things you got to realize is according to the AZA, the highest percentage of zookeepers in this country come out of this degree.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, another question. Is it worth pursuing a residency or a board certification after becoming a vet in terms of cost of doing those programs?
It depends on what you want to do, right? If you want to be a neurosurgeon, you need a residency. If you just want to be a general practitioner, you do not, right? So again, it depends on what are your goals, and the cost of the residency. Let's use the neurosurgeon example again. Yeah, that's probably going to pay off. In some other cases, if you do a residency and end up in the same practice that you would have ended up with just a DVM degree, it doesn't pay off for the money or the time.
And the pain. Those residents suffer. I'm not going to lie to you. You think vet school is bad. Oh my. It's a rough road. And Noah's absolutely right. Make sure it's something that's going to pay.
Okay, trying to get everything in. How important is an Excel spreadsheet logging work hours? Do you look at these and do they influence your chances?
Be honest. That also shows up in your application. If you say you've done 14,227 hours because it's on your spreadsheet, somebody's going to get out the deal and say that's 24 hours a day in the last 4 years, and that's impossible. So it's a good idea to keep track of it because they're going to ask you for it, but make sure that it makes sense, because we're looking for reasons not to take people because there's so many good ones on the list. And a little thing like that, overstating anything, is a good way to get knocked off of the list.
Dr. Brummer's right. That shows up like a sore thumb when you look at the application. You can tell who's bagging hours.
And hours are important, but I think it's also the quality of the hours, right? If you spend 20,000 hours mopping the floor while the doctor was dealing with puppies with parvo, did that give you, right? You're pretty good at mopping the floor, but I think you need to describe, right? You assisted with space and neuters. You did, right? Describe the quality of that experience, not just the hours.
Hours are good for you to keep track, because if you do several internships, you get to forget where you went before. So it's good for you to keep track and make notes for each one, because you forget. You will not remember what you did 4 years ago, or if you do it every holidays or every free time, you end up forgetting. So
So there was a question about GPA. If someone has a lower GPA, what are all of the factors that you look at besides GPA that go into an application?
It'll be me again. The administration is the one that cuts off the GPAs. We don't get to make that decision. All we get to see as the people looking at the applicants are the ones that the administration has decided are already qualified. So you got to have a good GPA, but that alone isn't going to get you into vet school. A poor one will keep you out, but a good one won't promise you you'll get in.
CSU uses the holistic model, and so there's a definitely they look or they ask us to look at the improvement over your 4 years. You know, you can mess up Life 102, but you know, messing up biochemistry and OChem is probably not a good thing. And it definitely, you know, as you improve as you go through is important too.
If you want to specialize in dairy cattle, should you get a board certification or do a residency?
Where do you want to end up, I guess is the question. I did an internship and I'll be honest, I felt that I wanted more practice because my whole idea was that I was going to be a practicing vet and I was going to have my own vet truck and go and visit farms. And so I did an internship, which is a 1-year thing here at CSU. That's how I ended up in Fort Collins. But so again, it depends on what with dairy cows do you want to do, right? And I'll say that probably it doesn't pay off unless it's something super unique, right? If board certified, if you wanted to end up actually in academia teaching at a vet school, yeah, you need to be board certified either in internal medicine or surgery with food animals. And I don't know if anyone else here has a different opinion, but with dairy cows, I think that there's other ways to make yourself more competitive out there.
I'd say that I agree with no, you could survive, you could do well, but it also gives you, you know, deeper knowledge. I think you will get positive things of these 2 or 3 years in a residency, and then you can go for the boards, which is many times more related to academia. But yeah, I see a value.
How important is making connections for your recommendations? I would also just add, who should you be asking for letters of recommendations? Because I get that question a lot.
Ask someone who can truly assess you. And when you ask someone for a letter of recommendation, the question should be, can you write me a good letter of recommendation? I get so many requests, can you write me a letter of recommendation? And I barely know the person. So no, I cannot assess how that person would be in vet school. So someone that has seen you work, and it doesn't have to be just with animals, right? It can be as a student in the classroom, someone that helped you with research, right? One of your mentors. But make sure that the person can write you a good recommendation letter.
someone you had a good experience with, someone that liked your work and you liked the person with whom you work with. So
best recommendation letters are when there is a personal element in there. When there is a template language that's copied and pasted in every letter, you know that the person who is reviewing that knows that, no, this is not a good letter. When there is personal touch in that, that's when that becomes a really good letter. So find someone who you have interacted with closely, who you know will do a good job writing. That person might be really good to you, nice to work with you, but make sure that person will write a good letter for you. That becomes really critical. So just make sure to ask that, do you have time to write a letter for me? Rather than assuming that, hey, I know this person, he will write a letter and that would be a good letter. You may have to do some cherry picking there, do your homework about who you are going to ask to write that recommendation letter from.
And we shouldn't have to say this, but it can't come from a family member. It's amazing how many students who have mothers or fathers who are veterinarians and practicing, and they work in the practice, and then mom or dad writes a letter. That doesn't do them any good. So I just had to throw that out there. I know you all are smarter than that, but just so you know.
In ANEQ 293, we spent today talking about networking, or making those relationships. If I know you and I know who you are and how you work, I'm more likely to go to bat for you than not. So yes, developing those relationships with people is the most important component, and they can tell us who you are.
Okay, we're going to wrap up here in a little bit, but I wanted to make sure if there was any last minute questions that we got those answered. Also, we wanted to just say your academic success coordinator is happy to connect you to any of these panelists via email or anything like that. We also are happy to help you kind of explore your journey as well with your pre-vet focus. So please feel free to reach out to any of us at any time and we can connect them. Okay, well, if there's not any further questions, I want to say thank you to all of our panelists for being amazing tonight and answering a lot of questions and for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you for putting this together.
Yeah, great job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I don't know when to stop the recording, so I'm just waiting.
I think you're good.
You stop it now, yeah.